slavery. This ancient evil by which one human being owns another and uses violence to force them to work, this slavery actually thrives in our world like never before. We are doing away with the idea that human trafficking is something that doesn't happen anymore, or that only happens somewhere else. It is here, and it is now, and it is everyone's responsibility to recognize that. There really are just three things you need to know about modern day slavery. First of all, that it is more vast than ever. Second, that it is just as brutal as ever. But thirdly, it is more stoppable than ever. For the first time in human history, there is a generation alive that could bring an end to slavery as a force in human affairs. In thousands of years, this has never been possible before, but now, on your patch of history, it is possible.
Morning, we're excited that I believe we'll have 6 continents represented this morning from around the world, so we're really excited about that. You know, one thing that comes up is for a lot of Rotarians, what is an action group? And as many of you may or may not know, that action groups are a group of dedicated Rotarians that care about issues, and there's several action groups. There's 26 action groups that cover everything from clean water to health and economic development. And ours obviously deals with the issue of slavery. And so what we see is our mission as an action group, a Rotarian action group against slavery, is that we can become that collective impact. And what's interesting is that Rotary looks at what we do in human trafficking and modern slavery as a lot of individual projects, but we believe it's a movement. And so I think that we want to show Rotary that as an action group that we work together and have that collective impact, which is what we're trying to do as an action group. And again, I mentioned earlier that we have grown during COVID, even though the issue of human trafficking and modern slavery has gotten worse during COVID, but we've actually grown and expanded our reach. And we're just really excited to see that Rotary National is really looking at us to lead the way on this. We've got members from cause-based human trafficking clubs on the call today, and they're doing amazing work as well to spread the word. And we work very closely with them. Matter of fact, I'm the honorary member for the cause-based club in Minnesota. I believe Karen and Michelle are on the call as well. So we're just excited to see how far we've come and where we're going with this. And I mentioned earlier that if you have any questions, please put it in the chat and we'll answer them that way during the call. I want to introduce a great friend, but also a board member for Rotary Action Group Against Slavery, Matt Friedman. He's an incredible advocate for this issue, and he's been an inspiration and a great mentor to all of us on the board, and has done some incredible work. Matt's been in the field for about 36 years. He was part of the UN agency on human trafficking, worked in Thailand and Cambodia, Vietnam, places all over the world. He worked for the U.S. aid, also in Thailand and Bangladesh, Nepal for many decades. He's advised many corporations on supply chain and other issues as it relates to human trafficking. And he is so well respected around the world. And we're just honored to have him here to tell a little bit about what he's working on. He's written an incredible book that kind of outlines his life and work in the field with this issue for many years. And I bought a copy a few weeks ago, and it's an amazing read. So I encourage all of you to get the book, and Matt's going to talk a little bit more about that here now. But without further ado, Cynthia, if you would showcase Matt or spotlight Matt. Thanks for being here, Matt. He's all the way from Hong Kong, by the way.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just start off a little bit about the book. The book basically profiles my 35 years working all over the world, and it's broken into 3 parts. The first part focuses on the historical aspects of this. I started working on human trafficking before it had a terminology, before anyone even really knew what it was. Second part of the book focuses on what are the lessons learned that I have come up with related to my modern slavery adventures, the places I've been, the programs that I've set up, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then the end of the book basically is kind of a call to action to try to help people to understand that for this to go away, we need everybody to stand up and be a part of the solution. So what I'm going to do now over the next 20, 25 minutes is just talk a little bit about kind of my rationale for why it's so important for the average person to step up and be a. Years ago, I desperately wanted to do something to address modern slavery, so I decided I was going to write a book. As part of that book writing process, I went from shelter to interview the women and the girls. I went to one shelter and it was a girl named Gita, and every time I approached, she said, no, I don't want to talk to you. But she basically sat and listened to all of the interviews that I was doing. When I finished in this shelter and I was leaving, Gita comes running up and says, I changed my mind, you can have my story. So I knew something really bad had happened to this girl. So she sat on one side of the table, the rest of us sat on the other side of the table. In over a 3-hour period, she told the worst story I'd ever heard of rape and torture and disease. It was honestly the worst thing I had ever heard. I really didn't know what to say. Finally, I turned to Gita and I said, wow, Gita, you must be so angry at those traffickers for the horrific things they did to you. She paused, and then she said, no, I'm angry at you and you and you. She pointed at us. She said, where were you? So that every single day she prayed for somebody to come and help. Nobody came. She prayed. She said that she went to school till she was 12. She knew that everything that was around her was right out in the open. Nobody was doing anything. She said she wasn't angry at the traffickers. She said they're just bad people being bad people. She said she was angry at the good people, at society for not caring enough to address the needs of a 15-year-old girl who had been commercially raped 7,000 times and she was dying of AIDS. Now I tell this story because Gita inherently understood that for us to be able to address this issue of modern slavery, we need the entire world to really care about this, that we can't do it with the 20,000 people that are out there. So as a result of this, I tried to make the case for why it is that we as human beings need to step up as individuals, not just the NGOs and the United Nations and so forth. And the reason for this is based on the number of people who we have in this situation, 40 million people. In fact, 9.2 million people enter per year, about 25,200 per day, or a new slave every 4 seconds. We're just talking about an enormous population who find themselves in this situation of modern slavery. With COVID, we anticipate that the 40 might get up to as high as 60 million. And the reason for that is you have people who had jobs. They go to the factory that they were working at. The factory says, well, no orders are coming in, go home. Quarantine results in them staying home. They don't have any savings. They have to borrow money in order to be able to pay for food. And as a result of that, many people go into debt. And when they can't pay the debt, the traffickers come in and say, well, I need a family member to come with me to go off to a brothel, or to a factory to work for a year and not get paid, et cetera, et cetera. So we anticipate that things are going to get worse. And we've been seeing this rise in cases for the last 18 months happening. At the same time, about 25% of the NGOs that I've worked with over time may not exist 6 months to a year from now. What we're seeing is that a lot of the kind of resources are being shifted over from supporting counter-trafficking activities to healthcare and various other things. They're relevant and important, but at the time when we have our biggest number of forced labor cases and human trafficking cases, we have less people focusing on, and this is a really important point. You've seen this, well, many of you have heard that the number of people that are helped globally out of 40 million people annually is about 100,000. When you put those two numbers together, 40 million and 100,000, it means that the world is collectively, with all of our resources, only helping about 0.2% of the victims. When it comes to the criminals, there are about 500,000 out there. Last year, we put about 9,000 in jail, which is 0.8%. So we're having impact, but not nearly the impact we really need in order to really make a difference. The reason why these numbers are so high is the profits generated from modern slavery are huge, 150 billion US dollars a year. The amount of money that's used to address that is about 350 million or 0.23% of the profits. So we have a huge number of people that are making a tremendous amount of money and very little money globally relative to the problem fighting it. When it comes to the people like me who work on this full time, there's something between 20 and 30,000 of them. And we are up against 500,000 greed incentivized criminals. We have to follow the rules and the regulations. They don't. And so as a result of that, they have an inherent advantage. And lastly, awareness related to this topic is abysmally low. You know, I do presentations every year, about 150 of them, and I'm always surprised when I go to the schools or the faith-based groups or the corporations that out of 100 people, if I asked how many of you have been exposed to this issue and really understand what this issue is about, I usually get less than 10%. When it comes to kind of the government response to this, we all know what the Sustainability Development Goals are. These are the goals that are set up by the world and managed by the governments to determine what impact the world is having related to trafficking, to poverty, to environmental issues, and so forth. 8.7 is the Sustainability Development Goal number related to this. But this is a very sobering truth. And I'm saying this not to be discouraging, but to kind of give the reality of the fact that the governments are supposed to, by 2030, eliminate human trafficking, which is 9 years from now. But for that to happen, we would have to save 12,000 people per day for the next 9 years, when in fact, at present, we are only helping about 137 per day. The point of this is to just demonstrate the extent to which we have to really regroup and do things differently. So what I'm going to do now is talk a little bit about some of the lessons learned that I've had related to how we as human beings, we as citizens, we as Rotarians can step up and get involved. There are many different categories, but with the amount of time that I have, I'm only going to focus on 4 categories. But before I do that, I'm going to basically ask the group here, how many of you consider yourselves to be superheroes? If you do, raise your hand. Okay. I'm only seeing a couple of hands here, and that's always what I see in this type of a situation. And the reason for that is when most of us think about heroes or superheroes, we think about that person who kind of runs in front of a bus to get that kid out or runs into a burning building. I'm going to recast what heroism is. Heroism is when we do a selfless act with no anticipation of getting anything in return. It's a kindness, it's a kind gesture. And so by us doing things for other people, if a person's walking in front of us and they fall and we help them up, that's heroic. If we help somebody with their homework, it's heroic. When we give a donation for a particular cause, we're heroic. And so this emphasis on heroism is important because we don't give ourselves the pats on the back that we should when it comes to the kind acts that we do on a regular basis. So all of you are basically heroes. And part of what the paradigm change has to be is for us to encourage ourselves and our family members in our community and our Rotary clubs to be a part of that heroic approach. So the first area that I want to focus on in terms of kind of a paradigm change is awareness raising. Now, we all know what that is. That's basically listening to the talks, it's watching the videos and doing things. But we really have to focus on this, not only from the standpoint of educating people, but also inspiring and motivating people. It's not enough just to know about something. You have to get people to really feel excited about it and wanting to do something. Now, the reason why awareness raising is so important is because if you don't know about an issue, you're not going to care about it. And if you don't care, you're not going to do anything. And that's one of the big problems we've had. We haven't been able to get the information out to enough people to help people to understand the relevance and the importance of this particular topic. So here in Asia, where I work, and I've worked with nearly every Asian country, we have probably about 700 prevention tools, awareness raising tools, and so forth. The difficulty that I have with some of them is that they're dated. You know, they have data that's used 15 years ago or 20 years ago. In some cases, some of the prevention materials are very confusing because the messages aren't really clear. In some cases, what they do is they open a person's heart to the idea of wanting to help, but they have no call to action. So one of the things that we do here in Asia, and just to give Hong Kong as an example, is we go through all those prevention tools and we identify the ones that are most relevant to the population we're trying to reach, and then we make them available. So we don't give the entire list. We focus on 2 or 3 things, maybe a film, an e-learning element, and so forth. But we try to do it in such a way that these prevention tools have a call to action so that people at the end of this process know what to do. Because in the absence of that, it's really hard for people to know, what do I do next? Another thing that's really important is if we have these standardized prevention approaches, is to get them shared within social media. Let's face it, anyone who has a large social media following is an influencer, which means that they have a community of people that they can influence in order to help educate and inform. And as a result of that, you know, we can really add value by allowing, you know, this material to get off to people. The second thing is, and I get in front of a lot of audiences who hear me talk, and at the end, they just, at that moment, are really feeling like, I want to do something. You know, what can I do? And they ask that question, you know, and what I also try to do with some of my audiences is to get them to commit to at least doing one thing a year. So if I have 100 people, I basically will pitch to the audience, can I get every one of you guys to just do one thing? Can I get you to stand up? Can I get you to just commit to something? And afterwards, come to me and I'll give you my email address and send me an email that says that you're actually doing something. And so by having that particular approach where you're challenging people to raise their hands, to stand up, to commit to something, you often get an action that you wouldn't get ordinarily. So what are some of the things that people can do? Well, one of the people who were in one of my audience said in an email that she went to her library and couldn't find any books related to human trafficking. And so she went to the library and talked about it, and they discussed the fact that they needed that. She then went to all of the high schools and found out that there was nothing in those high school libraries either. So as a result of just asking questions and a couple of calls and a couple of meetings, she was able to get library books all across the board. A second thing was I had a student who came up and said, I really didn't understand this until I watched a couple of films. And so she went to her school and arranged for the school to set up a film festival so that she was able to show 3 really good films. About 500 people benefited from this. She spent probably around 8 or 10 hours planning this, a couple of hours setting it up, but a lot of people benefited. That's what her contribution was. A father and son were at a motel and they saw some things happening that concerned them at the motel. And so they went to the manager and said, we heard that there's a hotline that you can use that would help to report if there is a human trafficking case taking place, or if a victim is in a hotel room, can you kind of put that hotline into your motel? And the person agreed. And after that, he realized how easy it was to be able to make that transition. So he just went to all the motels that were in his area and did the same thing. A couple of afternoons, a bunch of meetings, but at the end of that, something that's sustainable that will last for a long time. Traffic jam. We had one school that said, our students have all kinds of skills and abilities, and we want them to use their talent. And so they did a talent show to raise money. They sold tickets for about $10 US. They sold t-shirts, and then they had somebody did poetry, they did dance, they did public speaking. They did a variety of other things. And as a result of this, they raised a bunch of money and they created a lot of awareness, and it was really great. I had one person in the Netherlands who contacted me who said that he went into the police station and said, I'd like to be arrested. The police said, well, why do you want to be arrested? He said, well, because I'm contributing to human trafficking. And they said, well, what did you do? He said, well, I eat chocolate. They said, excuse me? Yeah, I eat chocolate, and chocolate is, the cocoa beans come from this. And so he went into this whole description of how by using chocolate, it could be dangerous and people could be exploited, et cetera, et cetera. And the police agreed to arrest him. It was kind of a playful type of arrest, but it got a lot of publicity. It made it into the newspapers, and it woke up a lot of people to the ironic situation that this person had put themselves in. And lastly, kind of a situation that has really bothered me in North America for a long time is in the 50 states, you still have 14-year-old girls who, when they're picked up for prostitution, are sometimes put in jail. There are some states that use the federal mandate that if you're under the age of 18 and you are in prostitution, you're automatically a human trafficking victim, and you should get all of the services that are available. But there's still a lot of states that either don't have a law or they don't know what this law is. A Rotary program that basically helped to identify which states are in that situation and which laws need to be changed and which awareness has to be increased would really make a difference for a lot of victims that find themselves in terrible circumstances. So the point of all of this is that each individual can come up with an idea or a suggestion or an approach that's consistent with their own personality, their own skills, their own God-given talents. And if they applied them and did it just once, if we could get 10 million people to do one thing, that would add up to a whole bunch of things. The third area is fundraising and donating. One of my favorite stories was a young girl who wanted to help raise money for modern slavery. She was somewhere around 9 or 10 years old, and she set up a lemonade stand. And over a period of about 3 months, she raised about $1,500 US. An amazing feat for a young person. And she became kind of a role model for others who felt like they wanted to do something, but they couldn't kind of get over the line to actually doing it. And this encouraged other people to do similar things. Here in Hong Kong, we have a way of raising money where we get students and parents to team up to sit down for 3 hours to put nuts on and off bolts to demonstrate the type of work that maybe a forced labor person would have. And then for every hour they do this, they get people to donate. We were able to raise a couple of years ago over $100,000 US from this. It offers an opportunity for people to be a part of the solution, but to also walk the talk and feel what it's like to be in this situation. Because at the end, after 3 hours of the numbing boredom, we say, what if this was your life? What if you had to do this 12 hours a day and you didn't get paid and you had to do this for years? It's the type of lesson that really stays with people. So, these types of contributions to the right organizations can make a big deal. And I'll just give you one example of one of my favorite programs. It was funded with $3,500 US. What it was in Mongolia, you have girls who are tricked and deceived and forced into prostitution through newspaper ads that say, if you want to get out of Mongolia and go to Japan and get a job, working in a restaurant, call us up. And so they call, and then they get sent to Japan. They work in a restaurant for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that, on a false pretense, they're sent to Macau, and then they're forced into prostitution. They do that for about 2 years, and then basically they are sent home, but none of them say anything because they'll never get a husband, and they'll bring shame to their family. So we knew this was happening. They knew it was happening. So for just a couple of $1,000s, we got a cell phone, put a bunch of minutes on it, hired somebody to answer the phone, put ads in the paper next to all those other ads to say, before you contact anyone else, contact us. And women would call and say, do you have a job? We'd say, no, but we're going to explain what's going to happen to you if you take those other jobs. So we could prevent something bad from happening. The second thing that happened was the women who had been trafficked heard about this, realized it was kind of like a hotline. They reported their cases. So we were able to go from 3 cases to about 300 cases documented. The last were the traffickers. They'd call up and say, you know, we're going to find you, we're going to kill you. But it was a cell phone. We had their cell phone number. We could then go after them. Small amount of money, super impactful outcome. You know, to keep a person in certain shelters in Cambodia, you can do it for $5 US a day. How many of us go out to dinner? We spend $60, $70 on a meal, skip that meal, donate that to one of the NGOs that are working on this, and we've made a real difference in the lives of certain people. The third area is the importance of the private sector and getting the private sector involved. Now, you know, when it comes to forced labor, we've heard how banks are involved, and they have to be involved because if any of that dirty money gets into a bank, it's money laundering, they get fined. We've heard about the sweatshops, and we've heard that retailers are being sued if they buy certain types of products in hotels and so forth. So it's pretty clear that companies have to get involved in this. And when they do get involved and they do take on these issues and they do find forced labor, it's cost effective because these guys know how to address bad business. But there's a lot of other people within the private sector who work for smaller companies or for companies that don't have a direct relationship, that if they knew about this issue could become ambassadors within their organization to address this. And so that's the importance of us kind of getting this prevention material out that you're going to hear about after my presentation, because the more presentations we do, the more hearts and minds we open up, eventually a certain percentage of those people self-identify as saying, this is my cause. And I'm sure just about everyone on this call has as their cause human trafficking, not because you selected it, it selected you. There's something about your DNA, something about who you are, something about you, the way you approach the world that draws you to this topic. And there are many other people out there, and if we can identify them within the private sector and engage with them and give them the tools and the means that they need, it's really going to make a difference. Some of the other things we can do with the private sector is help the procurement people who get the furniture and the uniforms and the food to look to see whether or not the people they're buying from have any kind of issues that could be considered forced labor like. Or you could have we had a law firm in Singapore. I presented to them afterwards. They said, yeah, we're a law firm. We don't have any issues related to this. So I turned to them and said, well, who cleans your building? And they said they didn't know. So I said, did you ever check to see whether or not these people could be exploited? They did. 2 weeks later, they came back and said it was a human trafficking case. The point I'm making is that there are many scenarios within the private sector by which if we can get people involved, people kind of caring about this, people kind of infecting their companies with a sense of good and a sense of responsibility within the organization, we would have a major kind of breakthrough related to this. And I'll just give you one story related to this. So I was in Washington, D.C., and I was at the American Banking Association conference. I finished my talk, had a banker come up to me and he said, I want to talk to you. This happens quite often. So he said, I was taking my family from one part of the country to another. We were driving. I had my wife and teenage daughter. We got about halfway there, and we stopped at a motel. And I got them tucked in, and I was going out for food, and I saw this girl being dragged into a room. She was about 14 years old, around the age of my daughter. It looked like forced prostitution. So I went to the manager of the motel, and I said, you know, I saw this. Didn't know if anything was going to happen, but 20 minutes later, the police came. 20 minutes after that, the guy was being taken out in handcuffs. The girl was being taken away to a shelter. Presumably everything was good. Said that was a milestone in my life. I was so proud of that moment. So I turned to him and I said, well, what do you do? He says, well, I'm a banker. I said, I get that. You're at a banking conference, but what do you do? I said, well, I'm a compliance officer. I look at the books. I make sure that we have no dirty money. I asked him to be focused on human trafficking. Said, yeah, we do those cases. So I said, dude, you just don't realize it, but you basically have been doing this type of work all this time. You are heroic in the fact that you are already a counter-trafficking person. Hasn't anyone ever told you that? And for him, it was like an epiphany. Like nobody had ever really honored him by saying what he was doing was contributing. So a month later, I was in Singapore. I was in front of 600 bankers. I told that story. I had 40 bankers come up to me and say, wow, you know, we feel honored that somebody actually thought enough about us to be able to say, we are contributing to something. And I add many other organizations, the auditors that are out there, the manufacturing companies that look at their supply chains. There's a lot of goodwill and a lot of good that's happening in the private sector we just don't know about. So just a couple of more things that I'd like to say. We talked about 0.2% of the victims that are being helped. And so people come up and say it's impossible. We can never address this. And so my response is kind of a theoretical response. And I say this, if there was an asteroid that was going to hit Earth and we had 2 years before it hit us and we knew it was going to come, but it would go to the left or the right if we were able to basically end modern slavery. Do you think we could end modern slavery? Well, I think the answer is yes, because we would have a motivation to do it. The thing that I am most frustrated with is if most people really knew the extent of what we're dealing with, the pain and the suffering and the agony that people go through, and they could internalize that and feel that, I think we would have a much better world, because people would feel the need to step up and get involved and be a part of the solution. So with Rotary having something like 1.4 million members, 46,000 clubs, a mentality of service above self, a demonstration of the fact that a global campaign has been and can be done related to with polio, it could be with this. We recognize the potential that Rotary has. And so that I'm going to end. I'm sorry I wasn't able to show you my slides. I hope that added some additional content to what it is that you guys wanted to hear about, and I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Great job. Great job, Matt. Thank you for sharing your screen. Amazing. Apologize again for the hacker. I mean, I think we got resolved. Several of you on the call on the Zoom helped make that happen. So I appreciate that. But I will say, we're hitting a nerve. I mean, 10 years ago, no one would even think about doing that, but because we're making progress, unfortunately, we have people like that. But moving forward, we'll be using a webinar format, so that won't happen. So again, I apologize for that. The one thing I'll mention too about, like Matt said about Rotary, the collective impact we have on an issue like this is enormous. And to give you a couple of examples when talking about legislation, sometimes as Rotarians, we think, well, we shouldn't get involved, but when the End Modern Slavery Act was before the U.S. Senate, Senator Corker, we were on the steering committee with Senator Corker, and Rotary was able to get 13 senators to co-sponsor the bill on both sides of the aisle because of Rotary's non-political. We were able to just reach across the aisle and get them to co-sponsor the bill. And another situation happened in Georgia, to Matt's point, where young girls are being prosecuted for human trafficking. We passed in Georgia a safe harbor amendment, which decriminalized any person, a juvenile under the age of 18, cannot be charged with trafficking their victim. And we were able to get Rotary to galvanize citizens across the state of Georgia and pass the amendment, the safe harbor amendment, by the largest percentage in the history of any amendment in Georgia. And it's Rotary members working together to make that happen. And so Matt gave some excellent examples about how we can, as Rotarians, do things. And we like to use the term the power of one, or the hero within all of us. And if we do that power of one in every community in the world collectively, the impact we can have is enormous. And I'll just mention one other thing too about events like this, these virtual events. We have met so many amazing people, and there's a few from Madison Rotary Club on the call, and we met them through a virtual event we did last January, and now they're partnering with us on a major grant in Uganda with Hope for Justice. And so these events, these connections are incredibly important, and I appreciate your dedication. And Matt, thanks for your amazing work that you do. And again, apologies for the unfortunate incident that happened, but we resolved that. And going forward, like I said, we'll use a webinar format, but I appreciate all that you do. You did a great presentation as usual.
Thank you.
And moving forward, we're going to talk, as I mentioned earlier, about education prevention. Is the area that we're really focusing on. Obviously, as an action group, we focus on all forms of slavery, but we believe as a action group, Rotary Action Group Against Slavery, that education prevention is the key to really ending this someday. And so we've really focused on that. We've created a toolkit. We've had an amazing team, subcommittee, not just Rotarians, but outside of Rotary that we'll talk about here in a second. But Amelia is our coordinator from Virginia and is kind of leading the charge on this. The steering committee has done an amazing job with this education prevention strategy that we've created, along with several others, to include Malcolm from Australia, creating a toolkit that is on our website, and you'll learn more about that in just a second. But this toolkit will be a resource for all of you to use. And just so you know, it's going to be a living document. It's always updating and changing to help you, begin this process of getting involved. And again, I'll just say to Matt's point is that we can do those one thing in our community. And I think most of you have been involved in this issue for a while, but sometimes it can be overwhelming. But if you can do that one thing, whether it be train law enforcement, support training law enforcement in your community. In my community, we actually trained all the school bus drivers in the largest school district in Georgia, US. And the impact that had is that was what we could do within our club. So we can make a difference in this issue. And I'd like Amelia to kind of explain this education prevention strategy that we have, the CAPE, and also talk about the toolkit and some of the ways that you can engage with education prevention.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. And first of all, I'm just really honored to be here. I'm honored to speak after Matt. Last time when I spoke after John Cotton Richmond, who's a former U.S. ambassador, and now I'm after Matt Friedman, which is like two amazing human beings, and to have him as my warm-up act, clearly there's something wrong here. But I just want to say thank you, Matt, for incredible grace under pressure there, dealing with a Zoom bomber. That was, we're clearly hitting, like Dave said, hitting a nerve here, and it attracts people like that, and I'm thankful that we got them out. Thank you to Cynthia and others that jumped on that as well. So just amazing work. I'm going to, because I think we've got us narrowed down to what looks like all Rotarians. I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen. That said, if it comes back, then I will go to the killing off the sharing of screen, and y'all just get to listen to me. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can make this work with sharing. Dave talked about our CAPE, our Community Awareness and Prevention Education Plan. This is the plan that the Rotary Action Group Against Slavery put together to be able to share with the to share our strategy, and what we want to do is invite you guys to participate in that. So with that, I want to introduce you first to our CAPE committee, and once again, thank them for the work they did, starting with our awesome global chairman, Dave McCleary, Ashley Bryant, who I don't think is on today, but she is a Rotarian out of California and represents Three Strands Global Foundation, and they have actually had a couple of great grants that have come out in partnership with Rotary, so they're a great partner in this cause and amazing subject matter expert. Bob Deering out of California, who's a RAGAS coordinator and was a partner with one of the Community Awareness Prevention Education grants with Ashley Bryant. So they together brought a lot of experience and on the street know-how of what they've seen and done. Cosette Vigari, who was on, I think she's still out there, is a RAGAS board member. She's the district liaison for her district, and she's also out of California. George Balatistos, who is the RAGAS vice chair. He's in District 6000 up in Iowa, and just a great knowledge base of what he has experience in as well. Malcolm Baird out of Australia has been up day and night, gathering information, compiling, condensing. He's just incredible with what he's been able to do. And Valerie Ellery, who is not a Rotarian yet, whoever's in Florida should like snag her as fast as you can. But she's with A21, which is a global anti-trafficking organization, and just a great subject matter expert again. So we had a heck of a team, and I was just honored to be among them to herd the cats, if you will, and boil it down into something useful that you guys can use going forward. So our mission statement for RAGAS is the Rotary Action Group Against Slavery is committed to connect, empower, and equip Rotarians to engage their communities to eradicate all forms of human trafficking locally and around the globe. So we saw earlier, we were talking about connections and engaging. What this plan is going to do is equip you to be able to really go out and execute community awareness. Because like, as Matt said, a big part of it is we're already superheroes in our own right. We don't recognize it necessarily, but there are things that we can do every single day to be able to be superheroes. So we want you to feel empowered to do it. We want you to be able to go out and spread that word with your community to be able to be empowered as well. So you'll see on here is a little QR code on some of these pages. That QR code will take you to the RAGAS website. If you're not a member, please join us. I'll keep popping it up there throughout so that you can grab it. I also put it in the chat along with the actual plan. So, and I'll show you where to get to that plan if you don't want to grab it out of the chat too. We talked about stakeholder groups. Who are different stakeholder groups and how can they invest in this plan? So obviously, some of our major stakeholders are individual Rotary members, people like yourself, whether it's individuals, clubs, or districts around the globe. Then we talked about our Rotary, our RAGAS members, ambassadors, and coordinators, and the board, of course. The general public out there. So people that are not Rotarians, but are in the general public, have the ability to be able to invest in a program and have a vested interest in making sure that we bring community awareness and then pushing that into that prevention education piece, which ties us into the schools, universities, and educators of all levels of education, from starting in your elementary all the way through college and post-grad, to local government and elected officials, our parents, students, including your primary and secondary schools, students, and then your NGOs that are providing the curriculum and other partners. So those are the groups that we talked about, and we specifically focused again for this part of the plan. There's other plans going on throughout RAGAS. For this plan was strictly the community awareness and prevention education. So those were the main stakeholder groups we talked about in this area. Obviously, there's other stakeholders into RAGAS, but those are the ones for Kate. So what we did is we broke down and said, what are the problems that those stakeholders face? And then what are the solutions that RAGAS is able to provide and can be able to plug those holes? So here's a, for instance, for individual Rotary members, clubs, and districts, people like you guys, some of the issues that you run across out there is that they're unaware that human trafficking even exists and that it could possibly exist in their own community. So what do you do? So what some of the things that we put out there, you'll see in the toolbox. We can get to it later, but we're going to create and provide awareness materials that you can get to as a RAGAS member to be able to put on community awareness education presentations in your club and throughout your community. We'll put out there blogs and articles and information that you can share, help boil that down, because there's so much information. What do you do with it all? So to help you boil that down, we'll give you the tools to do House of Friendship booths for your districts or your zone institutes when you're having those meetings, so that you can help spread the word about RAGAS and the tools that are available, as well as at that same place being able to share about human trafficking of all forms. So we're going to also have a speakers bureau that's getting set up now. So if any of you love to speak, love to do presentations in your own time zone, we would love to have you get engaged in that, to be able to help share about RAGAS, to share about modern slavery, and to be able to talk about how Rotarians like you and those in your club and in your district can make a difference wherever they're at in their lives. We can go through the rest of them as you go through. There's a lot that's in there. We did say, though, one of the problems that Rotarians face is and this was a problem that I had when I got into this. I think Dave started or Matt started at the beginning and talked about when you get that bite and you have this call to work on a project like this, then it's a little overwhelming. Where do I start? How can little old me in Warrenton, Virginia, I'm a banker. I have no background in trafficking stuff. I knew very little, but when I went to the Atlanta convention, I was convicted to make a difference. I came back and I couldn't get it out of my head. I couldn't get it out of my heart. Then how in the world could little old Amelia out here in Virginia make a difference in this huge, massive global problem? So I started picking away at it. And I didn't even know that RAGAS existed at the time, that there were other people that were out there with kindred spirits that could have helped me through the process. So we said, let's help provide some tools for individuals who want to start a project that may not have the support yet even of their club, because they can't even explain to their club what they want to do. So we took a lot of the things that I've done locally in my club and others on the committee and those that we've reached out to outside of the committee to be able to say, what did you do? How did you do it? So we're giving a roadmap to be able to walk through, to pick apart, and be able to decide what pieces you want to be able to get to where you want to go. So what we're doing, I'm going to boil this down. We've put together a wonderful toolbox, and I'll show you guys that in a minute, on our website that you can get to right now. That's open to any Rotarian to be able to get it. Well, anybody who wants to can get into it for right now. It will then I think it's the beginning of April, go behind a password protection area where only members can get into it. But we wanted it to be open to anybody in Rotary and out in the real world for right now to be able to access the information, because we're putting together and we're presenting today at the end of this, a request for proposals from you as our RAGAS members and as Rotarians, to be able to create and execute a community awareness and or prevention education plan in your community. We do have grant funding that's available for that. We will fund 10 grants, 10 projects from around the globe. We want to find them as diverse as we can get from different countries and continents and languages and types of clubs and types of communities, so we can get a good sampling out of that 10 or more, but 10 is what's funded, and we'll take as many as we can get, of course, to be able to execute a plan over this next Rotary year. And we'll see more about that in a minute. And those clubs that, those projects that are funded obviously get funded at that $10,000 match, but they also get other cool benefits. So the benefits that that they'll get is every club, whether it's funded or not funded. So say we get 500 proposals, we only fund 10 because we only have $10,000 to put towards it right now, easy math. But we're able to still provide for those unfunded, not funded from us projects, a free 1-year RAGAS membership to all of the Rotarians in that participating district. So if your club wants to do it, we will give a free membership to all of the other Rotarians in your district, because that way they can jump in, because they're going to hear about what you're doing in your club and say, well, we want to do that too. They'll have the chance to be able to jump into the behind the scenes for RAGAS to be able to get into that toolbox to get the tools and the roadmaps. And we wanted to have that ability to be able to spread that throughout Rotary. So everybody in the district gets to be part of RAGAS for 1 year to be able to have access to those things. The funded projects will then also have a mentor that's coming out of, whether it's a RAGAS coordinator or ambassador or board member, to be able to help them execute their plan. Because again, it's, especially when it's a new plan, it can feel a little lonely out there and a little overwhelming and daunting, or at least it did for me. And so we said, you know, helping them have those partnerships, being able to have a mentor going through it, we wanted to provide that for those clubs that in districts that needed that. So they'll have that. They can leverage us as much as they want to. We're also going to ask that the districts that participate adopt a resolution that at the district level that will encourage the RI board to officially take a stand against human trafficking. The board hasn't done an official stand yet. There's been talks, there's been discussions that have happened. We opened with Dave talking about President Shakar's mentioning it many times, bringing it up, but we haven't gotten an official stand on anti-trafficking yet. So we want that. We also want districts and clubs to take a stand locally, saying our Rotarians, our fellow Rotarians in our district, our fellow Rotarians in our club, take a stand against human trafficking. We're going to examine the trafficking in our communities, and we're going to take a stand against it. So we have drafts for that can be adopted. You don't have to start from scratch. You can obviously edit said draft to what you need it to be to fit for what fits for your community. But we have that available as well in our toolbox. And then we want to ask all of our districts that are participating to appoint a person, a human trafficking liaison that will work with us with RAGAS to make sure there's constant communication back and forth on the grant to be able to coordinate throughout that grant period and hopefully through the future. Because once you do that grant period, these projects are never one and done, right? Those of us that have done them, that's just the start. And then you start peeling back those layers of the onion. So we want to be able to be there to help support you throughout. The request for proposal is quite simple. It's 4 pages of a lot of blank space, right? So it's very straightforward. It can be on our form. It can also be in written form if you want to attach it to our form. Very simple. We made it. We took a lot of district simplified grants and other existing Rotary grant proposal templates to be able to narrow it down, to be able to make it so that we can get out of it, to make it as easy as possible for you as a club or a district to be able to apply for it. So those are out on the website. We will share that also in the chat here before we finish as well. And I'll show you on the site where to go find these, but very straightforward and simple to be able to do. We will ask your district governor, whether it's a club project or a district project, we will ask for your district governor to sign off on it just so we can track and make sure that we know, hey, there's somebody at the district level, because they're the ones who are committing to get us the contact information for those members in the district that can have access to our website and have that 1-year membership. So we do need the district governor to say, yeah, I authorize it, we'll release that information. And obviously we're going to keep that very secure on it. So we'll take care of that as well. So what's the timeline? We have between now and the end of February to submit a proposal. So that gives you a good solid 2.5 months to put together a proposal to be able to do a community awareness or prevention education project in your own community or in your own district. By the beginning of April, the projects will be announced by the board chair. We will fund those by April 15th, and then they can start working on them. Everyone in the district will ask for all of the emails to be sent to us in April, so that by the end of April, we can send out to all of the members in those districts who the links to be able to get to the RAGAS website to be able to log into it, so they have access to all of those resources in hopes that we get more projects, right? So we want to be able to get the word out about those. And we're going to have all of these projects wrapped up by the end of March next year of 2023. So kind of a 1-year project, so that we have hopes that when we have those back, that by the June RI convention in Australia, we'll be able to share some of our results with all of you, to be able to give some successes and to be able to share what's happened. Also, what will come out of that is, hey, this part of the CAPE plan didn't work. Like, we tested it, nope, this does not work. So we need to know that, and the only way we know that is through these proposals and following through the process. So we'll want that feedback from you guys of like, this part suck. Tell us. We're only going to get better if you tell us, because we've got blinders on at this point. So the final CAPE plan, I'll show you the toolbox here in a second. But it does include all of information about human trafficking and modern slavery prevention education programs, along with a list of criteria. If you want to pick a program that's that's in your own community or in your own country, in your own language, that's great. We encourage you to do that. We will give you a criteria to kind of scrub it against, because some are great, some are not. We want you to be able to go through and figure out what works best for your community, and us not tell you, you have to use this one, because that may not work for you. And so we do have some that we've scrubbed and said, we like these, we trust them, we're good with it. So we do have some that we can share with you, that you can go through and say, yeah, no, we like this one here. That's gonna be an easy one. I don't have to go out and figure out and scrub against criteria and stuff. So we did want to make it a little bit easier on Rotarians not have to do that. There's information, resources on major industries. So banking, medical and hospitals, law enforcement, schools, all of those types of things and more. The lodging industry, since Matt talked about earlier, the lodging industry, there are resources out there to be able to connect to industry specific trainings that are available. So if you guys are like, hey, we want to do a training, like Dave said, we want to train the school bus drivers in our community. There's training available for that. You don't have to ever create a wheel. That's what we wanted, was to make it really easy on Rotarians. If you want to create a wheel, knock yourself out. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of time. Go for it. But if the wheel already exists, if you put your own local spinner on it, I would much rather have you spend your time doing that. So we wanted to provide resources for you and tools for you to be able to do that. Those RI and district resolutions are out there to make your guys' lives easier. Even if you're like, hey, we're not going to do a big proposal and a big project specifically because we don't have time to deal with that this part of my year, but I'll still sign off on a proposal or on a resolution. We would love to have you do that even as a minimum. So we have that information out there. That community awareness campaigns by Rotary clubs are out there. All sorts of stuff is out for you guys to be able to be better at sharing information, you to be more successful and feeling more equipped and more empowered to go out and connect with your community. So I'm going to bring up the actual web page here so you can see it. I will tell you, I live in a world of a whole lot of firewalls, which is really fun for me. So like half the stuff you won't be able to see because the credit union where I work, our firewalls get a little sensitive with me. This is the new web page. It's ragas.online. I've put that in the chat a couple of times. Grab it. If you go out to the QR code that was up there, I'll put it up again here at the end. But that's how you get to is ragas.online. All of the information is out here, including how to join us. That video that we showed at the very beginning, right there in the landing page. It's the second thing right after our mission is that video. So if you want to share that with your clubs or your district or just someone you're like, dude, I was in this thing today and let me show you this video, this is where you can get it. So it's right out there loud and proud on the page. So in here is the what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. How we do it is the strategy. The request for proposal is on here. That form that I showed you is on there. The actual toolbox is on there. And the resources, all of those extra resources. If I go hit the RAGAS toolbox, if it wants to pop up, it is a Google Drive. So you can jump in there, pull off the PDF, you can get back and forth to it, all of it's there. Like I said before, right now it's open to the real world. Anybody can get to this stuff. After April 1st, it will go behind lock and key where only members can get access to it. So you will, all of us that are members will receive usernames and passwords via email to be able to access the RAGAS toolbox and tools that'll be behind there on the webpage in the future. So there's a ton of stuff out here. The resources one is crazy big, has all sorts of stuff. And thank you, Malcolm and George. You guys rock on putting all this stuff together because it is a ton of information that you can jump in on all of these different links and tools. So they're just amazing. So I'm going to wrap up here. If you have your phone handy and you want to jump out there on the website, feel free to jump out there on the website to be able to join if you're not a member. And like we said before, we're all superheroes. It worked out great that Matt tied in superheroes into this program today because we were talking about before. I'm like, hey, I wore my superhero costume. Like, come on. And so we're joking about it, but we're all superheroes in our own rights. And as I said at the very beginning, is some superheroes have masks, not all of them, but they all have a cape. So with that, I'll put on my mask and I've got my RAGAS cape on and I will open it up for questions. Go ahead and use the chat, I think, because I don't think we've turned it on so anybody can speak after our little friends earlier.
Great job, Amelia. Thanks for great presentation. Thanks for kind of organizing us all to get the committee going on this issue, but we're excited about this opportunity. I'm just looking at the chat now. One thing I'll mention too, Matt put the information about his book, which is a great resource also, where you can buy it. So so check that out.
So the chat is open, so feel free to jump in and with the chat if you have questions or things you want to do there. The QR did not, what? How did the QR code not work? The heck? Worked for me yesterday. How did it not work today? All right. Well, then go to the link for the ragas.online. If the QR didn't work, because it worked for me yesterday perfectly fine. Dang it. Oh yeah, the PayPal connection, I can't control that one. So that one there is going to be a Dave question on for the membership part. As I say, it should take you out to the page at least.
Yeah, it shouldn't have an issue with that. But if you do, just send me I'll put my email in there as well, so that you can, any questions as it relates to that, just send me an email.
Cool. Awesome. Oh, I said I would put out, well, I showed you guys where to find on the RAGAS website, the web page or the proposals. Again, that's down in the middle. The proposal is out there down in the middle under how we do it is where you can get the RFP to be able to fill in and everything and all the directions on there. I'm going to go ahead and put it here in the chat as well, so you guys can all see it there. So hang on just a second to everyone in the meeting, so you can grab the actual PDF if you want. Somewhere. Guide Rotary Club. And I'm so sorry we can't have the everybody be able to speak at this point. I guess we must have we're officially big enough that we are, or have a big enough influence that the bombers want to come in and get us. Like, I'm just shocked at that. I've never experienced that before. So that was definitely a new one for me.
We'll make sure we use a webinar format next time, so that's not possible for sure.
Yeah, we're getting there. Oh, come on. Trying to get the RFP piece of it to come up. So the toolbox, so you're online. So again, so from the website, I'm going to share that screen real quick, and I'll come back over to doing that. On the screen, the website, go down to the middle of it. So under the video, how we do it. The RFP is here, and the toolbox is right below it. Hopefully that helps answer that question. It's right smack in the middle of the page.
And we also have some additional resources in that last link, as you see, that you can we'll see if my Google Drive will actually work with me. Again, firewalls at a credit union, we don't let stuff through. So we'll see. I don't think it's going to let me open it there. But you can see where it is, at least, to be able to get to it there. And if I can get it over in the chat, I'll go put it in the chat too. And yes, to answer the question to Joyce, this has been recorded. We're going to go through and we will edit out the very beginning of Matt with all of that jazz. So all of that will go away in the recording of the beginning of his, but it'll start from when he gets, when he was able to just speak and we got everybody else out. So it'll miss that very beginning part of it. Maybe we can figure out a way, if we get really fancy, to splice in the video piece over here. Otherwise, it's on the RAGAS website again, so you can go out and grab it. But hopefully you'll be able to have this information. Again, like Dave said at the beginning, it's going to be on our YouTube channel. And I think he was talking about emailing it out as well. But if you email Dave McCleary or myself, we'll make sure you get a link to it, to the video if you need it. And then Matt, could you share your PowerPoint? Would that be?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm happy to do that. Do you want me? I'll put my PowerPoint here in the chat for you guys that I can find easily. And then I will also put the, I'll get the RFP to go in there. I'm just having an issue with getting my my computer to play nice with me.
And then Matt as well, if you could share.
Yeah, Dave, I'll go ahead and send this just directly to you.
Okay.
I realize that I need to compress a few photos to make it more manageable. So you'll get that
great.
within 10 minutes after we finish.
Okay, terrific.
Anyone can use it, and contact me. My email will also be available if you have any questions.
Terrific.
There's mine. And why am I not getting? RFP is 1013. That's why I got overly organized and named it something funky. I put my presentation is in there if you want that. Here is the RFP is also in the chat now. So I put in 3 resources, the RFP, the actual plan, and the presentation I just did. If you need any of that, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you guys out. I'm happy to present for clubs or districts. Just let me know.
Terrific.
And I may or may not show up in a costume. It could go either way.
We'll have those available at the convention in Houston. Well, this is great. I think that most people asked and answered the question, so we appreciate everybody being here this morning. Thanks for your commitment. Again, apologize for the beginning, but we'll edit that out and get the recording done and send it out. And love to get your feedback. Send us an email. Send me an email. Send Amelia an email. And education prevention is going to be the key to eventually ending human trafficking. So we believe strongly in it. So I appreciate the team, and thanks to the RAGAS board, many on this call today, for their support and hard work, and many of the coordinators. Again, we have callers from 6 continents on board, so it's exciting to see the enthusiasm moving forward. And just one other last note, we're going to be doing a series of events, again, webinar style, in January. One's going to be on the healthcare field. We're doing the other thing that's really exciting is RAGAS is partnering with Jones Day for a compendium of laws, which actually has actual laws in 129 countries in all 50 states. And some amazing corporations are partnering with us as well, like JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, PayPal, and many others. We're going to be launching that on the 21st of January during Anti-Slavery Month in the US. And it's going to be a hybrid event, so it'll be live as well as virtual. So if you're interested in that, let me know as well. And attending that, we're going to have a series of panels for that as well. But we just appreciate your commitment to the issue. And again, please reach out to me. If you're not getting the newsletter, also let me know. We have a distribution list of around 3,500. If you're not on the list, I know in some cases it comes through constant contact, it goes into spam. So just let me know if you're not receiving it on a regular basis. We send that out once a month. The other thing, lastly, I'll mention too, is we're really on our newsletter, and we're creating a blog section on our website. We want those Rotary stories. You are the people of action. You're the ones that drive this issue across the world. And so if you're working on a project as it relates to human trafficking, modern slavery, let us know. Send us the story. We want to showcase that on our blog and on our newsletter, because there's some amazing stories that I find out. And what that does is inspire others to do the same thing in their community. And so please let us know. Send us articles. We like them to be fairly short and succinct so that people will read them. But again, we like those articles, or like for you to send those to us by around the 20th of every month, because the newsletter goes out around the 1st of every month. So if you would get them to us, the stories and projects you're working would be amazing, because we want to share your story. So we appreciate that. Well, with that, any last comments from Amelia or Matt before we
just thank you to all of you. I appreciate your time today. So thank you, and go be superheroes.
Same here. Thank you all very much. It was a great honor to present to you today. And if there's anything I can do to support your efforts, by all means, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Well, great.